Welcome to Now That's Something Good, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary and the everyday ordinary. Now here's your host, Sarah Good.
Welcome back, friends. We are so glad you are here. Today on the show, we have a really special treat for you. Mr. Mike Boulware is in the house. We actually recorded this episode on location at the infamous Woody's Beach. You'll hear more about that in a minute. Mike is a husband, father, grandfather, and an incredible encourager. His story today, I think, is going to bring you some hope to keep facing each day, no matter what it brings. Because we are on location, you will hear some random background noises and even a phone ring. Mr. Boulware is one popular guy. Now, here is my conversation with Mike Boulware. Hi, Mike. How are you today?
Good. So good to see you, Sarah.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So, Mike, I got to tell you, this is our first on-location podcast episode.
Oh.
You're the very first one.
Whoa.
So, we're here with Mike Boulware at Woody's Beach. Inside, we call it a cabin.
Woody's Cabin.
Woody's Cabin. So, can you tell us just a little bit about Woody's Cabin so people can picture where we're at?
Yeah. Woody's Cabin is a family-owned, on a family-owned farm. And it's on the edge of a lake here where there's always been a cabin, really. My dad built this lake when I was in junior high in 1965 or 1966, somewhere in there. And it wasn't too many years after that he built a little cabin here. And we decided it was time for an upgrade. And so about maybe 2 years ago, we started on that. And we got too late a start, so it actually, most of the work happened in 19.
Okay.
And the old cabin was actually saved.
Oh, we said there might be a phone call.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
The old cabin was actually picked up and moved over here to the side and is now the boathouse for the storage of the toys and the boats that you need at a lake. And then we poured a new slab adjacent to the old slab. And so the old slab is the porch slab, and the new slab is here in this little 20 by 30 metal building with a rustic cabin.
Yeah.
And we just completed it last December, I think. And we've really enjoyed it. It's been used many weekends since then and often during the week as well. So it's just a wonderful resource for our family and friends.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We've been beneficiaries, is that the right word, of getting to come out here a couple of times, and we love it. But you said, so we're going to have to post some pictures for you listening. We'll post some pictures so they can envision Woody's Cabin and Woody's Beach.
Well, that's fine.
But see, I didn't even know. You already said the little fishing, there's just it's wooden, right? Out here was the original cabin?
Was the original cabin, yes.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And
it was built in 1974, as it says on that slab out there.
Wow.
And it was built by my dad and his brother-in-law, a guy named G.H. Schrock. And so that was built in 74. And it served us well for a lot of years, but it wasn't very big, and so it's now the boathouse, and we have this nicer cabin now.
I love it. And how big is the lake that sits right out here?
3 acres.
3 acres.
It's of course we're blessed that it is old as it is, and it's been cared for. Cattle have not been able to get into this lake, and the land above the lake has not been cropped. So this lake is still about as deep as it ever was, about a 20-foot deep lake.
Wow.
And it's 3 acres. And but we have a lot of lovely, sorry about that, we have a lot of lovely trees around it that have just matured over the years. And so that really helps the setting part.
Okay. Well, it's really beautiful. We love being out here. So you got to tell me, well, let's jump back. I'll jump back to Woody's Beach. But so, Mike, I got to ask you this question. A lot of people around here call you Papa B. Now,
mainly Christy Boulware.
I was going to say, I was going to say, is she the only one that calls you? Is that grandkids call you that? Like,
it's all her family. It's Christy who thought of it, and it's her family. That's where the Papa B comes in.
Do you like the name Papa B?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
My wife sort of has some little bit second thoughts about it, but no, I like it fine. There's no problem with that.
Well, she calls that to you so much that sometimes I feel like we don't know what name to call you because that's the name I hear in my head so much. So I'm like, Mike, Papa B. So if I slip up at some point.
Grandpa Mike works good too.
Grandpa Mike. Yeah. Well, let's back up. Tell us about your family, your wife. Tell us just all that.
Well, my wife and I have lived not far from here for ever since we got married, I guess, in 1973.
Okay. So what year? This is... How many years have you been married then?
73 to 20.
We can't do the math. We're
26 and 20, 46.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Been married
Congratulations.
46 years. I didn't go far to get her. She was in my graduating class at North Callaway High School. She's raised up in Williamsburg, and I grew up in Hatton, and those two elementary schools attend the same North Callaway High School. And so we've just had a wonderful life together, raised three wonderful kids, and two of the kids have settled in Callaway County with their family, and there's 5 grandkids there.
Okay.
And then Christy and Troy have settled in Wentzville, and there's 3 more. So we have 8 grandkids, 4 boys and 4 girls, and
Wow.
life is really good.
I was say, how does it feel getting to be a grandpa?
Oh, it's well worth the pain and
Making it through the parenting years.
it's well worth the effort.
Somebody said, I've heard people say that like grandkids are like the reward for making it through to.
I think there's probably something to that. I do enjoy all of them at once when they're here and they can get outside and you can see them. When I have all of them in my house, sometimes that's a little much. But I enjoy all the grandkids, and I enjoy them whether it's 1-on-1 or 8-on.
Well, that's a lot of fun. Family's good. So do you have extended family in this area too, outside of kids?
Oh yeah. See, this farm was actually purchased by my great-grandfather.
Okay.
3 years after the Civil War.
Wow.
And but he actually bought it from another family member, his soon to become his father-in-law.
Okay.
And we have not researched when that person got the farm. So it goes probably pre-Civil War.
Wow.
Being in our family. And, there's been times some of it maybe was owned, parts of it might have been owned somewhere else. But anyway, it's all back pretty much together. Archibald Harding was that great-great-great-grandfather, I guess. But
that's a long time for it to be in the family.
It's a long time to be in the family.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, we have cousins around here. We have aunts and uncles, and I have an aunt down in Troy.
Okay.
And so I'd say from St. Louis to Hatton, that's been our world family-wise.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so you call it Woody's Beach and Woody's Cabin. We got to back up. Who's Woody, or where does Woody come from?
Woody is Woodrow Wilson Boulware, born in the pandemic flu year of 1918.
Wow.
Named after then President Woodrow Wilson. His wife, I love her name, Jaylee. She and Woodrow married after World War II, and so that's Jaylee passed December of 18. Woodrow's still alive and living in the Veterans Home in Mexico, Missouri, and I love to go there and visit him. They sometimes they shut us off. Some worker will get the COVID or something, and they'll shut us off from visits. But the way it is now, and has been several weeks during the summer, is that we can set up times and go in there and visit him. And we try to do that every week that it's available. We try to do it.
Wow. And so did he have a house out here too?
His house is on the other end of the farm, about a half a mile west of here.
Okay.
It's now rented out to my son's mother-in-law.
Wow.
And, that house was, here's a story.
Yeah,
that house was started by his father, Finus. And if you can imagine, at that time, Finus owned 80 acres that this house was on.
Wow.
And it's now a much larger farm. But anyway, he started this house, and his story to my dad was it was a spec home. He was going to sell it. Now, if you can imagine somebody building a spec home on 80 acres in 1950, I think it was a setup. My dad was dating my mom. He was trying to prod him along. And indeed, before the walls were totally framed up, they'd announced their engagement, and that was their home.
Wow. And so they've lived. So this, I just still can't get over like the generational. I feel like that's something that where Will grew up on a farm. So, it's probably a little more for his family that the generations passed down. My family does not have anything like that. So I always love hearing those stories. Like, we have no land. There's no but I love hearing those stories of generations. So, Mike, so you grew up in Hatton, Missouri. That's where we're at. We didn't even say where Woody's Beach is at, but Hatton,
Missouri.
Hatton, Missouri. What is your... I know you're retired now, right? Is that true?
Well,
what does life look like right now?
And so my whole career has been at a bank in Fulton, Missouri called the Callaway Bank.
Okay.
And I went through the various progressions, was a loan officer for many years, but then I became business development person, and because I'm a good salesman.
Okay.
And so that's what I've been doing the last 25 years probably. And
Okay.
I still do that, but I do it from home. Since I've been diagnosed with cancer, it's just been smarter during COVID and everything for me to not go into the bank. So they call it working from home.
Okay. How's that going?
It's going fine.
Okay. That's good.
It's going fine.
That's good. Well, Mike, you mentioned cancer. I want to bring this up in whatever part of that you want to tell, but how long has it been since you got that diagnosis?
Yeah, okay. Let me think about that. It was almost a year ago now when I spoke at a Fearless conference about my diagnosis with cancer, hadn't it? And so I had just learned, I guess, in April before that. So that goes back to April of 18.
Okay.
And I knew I'd had prostate cancer and had my prostate removed, but I thought I was totally free of cancer.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden in April of 18, they said, oh, no, your prostate cancer is back. And I said, well, where is it? I don't have a prostate. And they said, we're always going to call it prostate cancer wherever it appears, but it's in your bones. So at that time, they said, well, this is a bad one. This is 9 out of 10 as far as being bad, and said it's so persistent that we probably, at that time, how old was I? 66. They said, we'll probably give you 5 years life expectancy.
Okay.
So that really shook me, as I shared with the Fearless women.
Yeah.
And, but, you do what you got to do, and the Lord has really blessed me with a great tolerance for chemotherapy.
Okay.
The particular recipe I'm taking is called docetaxel, and docetaxel has done me a lot of good. My numbers are good. And let's just say that right now cancer is not an immediate threat, okay?
Okay. That's good news.
But the fact I'm taking chemo and I've had it all summer, I'm not a very energetic boy, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah. I got to get my sleep. Yeah.
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 And how did you start the chemo treatments right away when you found out again with the?
I took chemo right away all summer last summer, and it worked pretty good. And then I tried a second opinion and tried something called immunotherapy.
Okay.
And it's not a lot different than chemotherapy. But anyway, they called it immunotherapy. And I tried that. It did me no good at all. I had to quit that because my numbers were just really going south.
Okay.
And so back in February or March, I switched back to the first doctor in the chemotherapy treatment of docetaxel, and been doing that every 3 weeks now for about 7 or 8 treatments. So I'm doing good, though.
And how many do they have? Is this the kind where there's X amount of chemo treatments, or they just kind of keep watching it as it goes? Or
yeah, they've changed their philosophy on that a lot, and they don't tell me right now.
Okay, just kind of.
They just say, well, when it's time to quit, we'll tell you.
Yeah, but the good news are, you said the number.
The good news are all my numbers are pretty good. The scans that they do, your bone scans and connective tissue scans and all that stuff, they're all good.
Yeah,
so.
That's praise God for that.
Praise God.
Well, Mike, if you don't mind, and again, I'll just ask a little more. You said it shook you. I mean, this was kind of out of the blue a little bit with the reoccurring.
Oh, yeah.
Do you mind talking any more, just
No,
a little bit about that?
That's fine. Christy asked me to talk about it that day, or at that meeting, and I didn't do a lot of preparation, but as God often does, he began to lay thoughts on me that week before that. And a lot of it came from Sunday school or the preacher, and just comments that were made. And it really had a grip on me at that time. I could barely talk about it at that time. My voice was very emotional when I made that talk. But it was just something that I had to do because Christy asked me to do it, and I was really wanted to do it once she asked me to do that.
So to connect a couple dots for you listening, a few episodes back, we had our friend Christy Boulware. So we've not even made this connection on. She leads a ministry called Fearless Women. Christy is Mike's daughter-in-law. So Christy married Troy, who is Mike and Brenda's son. And at Fearless, Christy had Mike come out and speak, and we'll link it in the show notes because I know that probably was really hard and emotional, but you did such a great job.
Thank you.
So I guess part of my question would be like, how did it feel to be talking to a room full of mostly women? Does that like...
It was very ironic. I mean, here I am, a guy with a guy cancer that would never invade their body, but I enjoyed doing that. And looking back on it, I don't know. I might have changed something, but I wouldn't have changed too much. It went pretty well.
You did really well. You actually, if you don't mind, you shared an analogy. You had a piece of paper up there, like a drawing thing, and you shared it. Would you mind? Can you tell that to our people listening? It was really good.
It had just come to me in Sunday school class that week that lives, Christians, everybody's life, but especially a Christian life, there's just so many ups and downs. And how do you explain all that? And how do you, and I talked about the fact that typically when we're referring to the ups and downs in our life, the graph, the heart graph, what's it called?
Like the echocardiogram, is that it?
Like echocardiograph is used as, but I said, that doesn't really describe it properly. It's more of a starfish, like up and down, where it kind of goes in a circle. And when you're in the low point of your low points in life, it's kind of like when you're down in the little they call the starfish things arms.
Yes.
And of course, your high points in your life is when you're way up on the tip of the starfish arm, and then the low point of your life is when you're down in that armpit, that little little V. And so and I've done some research on starfish. They're pretty amazing, and they, the ones we typically think of have 5 arms, but they could go up to 40 arms. So,
really?
Depending on what kind of life you live, if you're like David in the Bible, my gosh, he would need a 40-arm starfish to describe that poor guy's up and downs. But,
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and so you said up and down, and then I remember you said like then the closer in parts, or you kind of put God in the middle.
Put God in the middle, and when you're in the lowest point, when you're down in that armpit, that's when you're closest to God.
Yeah.
And it really... it really helps, golly.
Yeah.
It really, and it's so easy to forget about God when things are going good. You're up on the tip of that arm, and things are riding high,
right.
We forget how much we need Him sometimes.
We do. So I guess, Mike, how would you say in this last year, this season, that you've felt God closer? Have you felt that, like, if you're in the armpit, you're in the armpit of the starfish.
I don't feel like I'm in the armpit today. Okay,
well, that's good. That's good. That's good.
I feel like I was in the armpit, 18 months ago, but I've had some good high points since then, and
good.
He you know how it is. I mean, God just works in your life daily.
Yeah.
We've had several things go right in the family. Now we were through having the grandkids, so all those wonderful events are already in place.
Yeah.
But all the little accomplishments that they come up with, those are just wonderful to witness and be around. And then just the changes as the family develops, you see what our kids are doing. And, I'm so proud of Troy and Christy and Stephen and Rachel and Jody and Corey. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to someone listening today, Mike, we have listeners all over, different ages, different life places. Somebody who's feeling like, hey, they're kind of in the low parts. What encouragement would you give to them, or what would you say?
Oh, God bless you. Just raise your eyes to the Lord and open the Bible to whatever page it comes to and read a few verses, and just remember that He's the reason you're here, and whatever He's got in store. And usually those low points don't last all that long. That's another thing. They're more of a brief indention. You usually bounce out of them pretty quick, and things will get better.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned, I don't know if you'll, I'm sure you'll remember this, but in case you don't, I'm ready. Okay. At Fearless Women, you mentioned a song that particularly had kind of been just ministering to, or you were clinging to. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that was a song that we back when we had a choir, back before COVID. Okay. My wife had sung in the choir for a number of years. Now we've been out of it for a while, but thanks to COVID. But
thank you, Corona.
Yeah. But that particular Sunday, our song leader had reached down into her past books that we've had sung out of, and pulled out an old one that we all remembered our wonderful tenor singing. Anyway, it was such a. It was just. It's the same God in the night as it is in the day is the basis for the song, and same God in the high points and the low points of your life, and it just hit so close to what I was planning to talk about that I couldn't even sing it. I couldn't sing the words in church that Sunday, and so then we had the meeting on Tuesday, and I had the words printed out. And I wanted to use them, and I couldn't read them. I had to have Christy read them, but it was just. I didn't bring those words, but
no, it was amazing.
It's an awesome song.
Well, there is a line I just got to tell, just to give a little encouragement here. Like I said, I was there at that night, and there's a line that says He's the God of the mountain and He's the God in the valley.
Yep.
That no matter where you're at, whether you're at the tip of the arm of the starfish or in the armpit of the starfish, which I love the armpit time, that He's still there. And
same God.
Yeah,
Same
there's
God.
a newer song that we've been singing. It's called Graves in the Gardens.
Oh.
And it's the same. I'll have to send it to you later. And for those of you listening, go
Fun.
check it out.
All right.
And it talks about just how that God's in the business of making beautiful things out of things that look like they were dead or that don't have life, that He does that. And they sing that line in there that He's the God of the mountain and the God of the valley. And I think I will forever remember that line as you talking, Mike, about that. I mean, it's just so powerful. It's supposed to be, and every time I hear it, I'm like, that's so true. So hopefully, I'm sure somebody listening today, you need to remember that. Need that reminder today.
Yep, that's good.
That God's the same.
Same God.
Yeah. Do you have any scriptures or Bible stories that have been kind of impactful to you through this season that?
I haven't really picked one out. They're all impactful and meaningful.
Yeah.
Of course, the four Gospels are what you hang on to. But all of the letters of Paul are really important. And then I even like Old Testament stuff. Like I said, we'd just been studying David and all his ups and downs in the Bible. And I'll read about David. He had a heck of a life, poor guy.
Yeah, he did.
But God loved him through it all. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mike, thank you for sharing that part of your story. I know it's a little difficult, but you're using it across the board.
Hey there, Will breaking into today's episode with Papa Mike Boulware. So glad that you tuned in today. And I just want to share with you two encouragements, really. Number one, chances are that you are an elder to someone in your life. There's probably someone that looks up to you and that, just like Papa B, could use a good word, could use a funny story, and could use just some wisdom that you could share from your own life. Even through the hard times that you've gone through, chances are someone else is going to be encouraged by your story about how you weathered through those storms and how you came out the other side a better person. And so I'd encourage you, those who are looking up to you, be willing to share your story, the highs and the lows, to offer words of encouragement, because that's definitely going to be something good in their lives. And number two, look through your contact list. Chances are you know someone that you look up to that you could receive encouragement from. I'd invite you to send a text message or reach out on Facebook or send them an email. However you reach out to somebody, give them a call and ask them if you could buy them a cup of coffee or take them out to lunch or have a Zoom call and just ask them to tell your story. They're going to be honored that you asked and willing to tell their story to you. And I guarantee you it's going to offer some hope and some life. That's really the heart behind our podcast, is to share the good things happening in our lives. What often seems like mundane or ordinary can turn around and be extraordinary for somebody else's life. So I invite you to do those two things this week. It really will bring something good to somebody else's life. Got a favor to ask. If you would you share this podcast today? If you've appreciated our conversation with Papa B so far, would you share it with a friend? Look through that contact list, find somebody, send them a text message or however you share information, and tell them why you appreciated this episode or the podcast. And number two, if you could actually go to Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, if you can rate us and give a little description of why you appreciate it, that'll help point other people towards the value of Now That's Something Good. It's not about us. It's not about Sarah, not about Will. It's about telling goodness that will hopefully bring hope and help to somebody who's going through a tough time in their life. That's why we're here. Okay, time to get back to the conversation with Papa B and Sarah. But first, I want to tell you, as you know, our life is a little bit crazy. When we went out to record this episode live at Woody's cabin, I forgot to bring the charger, and so the computer died halfway through the recording. Thankfully, we have a couple backups, and so we put those together so you're not going to miss a single part of our conversation. The quality's just not as good in the second half as it was in the first. But I'm sure, I thank you for your grace. Let me just say that. Thanks for your grace. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this conversation with Sarah and Papa Mike Boulware.
Well, Mike, let's switch gears a little bit. So we were actually talking before we hit record about coffee.
Yes.
And I feel like we need to talk about coffee for a second.
Let's do it.
Are you an everyday coffee drinker?
Every day.
Okay. And what's your coffee of choice?
Well, Folgers has been the one that I've drunk at home for several years.
Yeah.
And it's always tasted pretty good to me. But that's one of the dreads of chemotherapy is your taste buds get affected.
Okay.
And after last summer, they really got affected, and I just didn't care for coffee at all by the time I was through with my chemotherapy I took all last summer. But it's been better this time, and it's really, I mean, Will's coffee is so good. I can't even tell any difference than when I was not on chemotherapy when I drink his coffee. So, I doctor up Folgers with creamer and that sort of thing, but Will's coffee, straight, buddy.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. What kind of creamer do you normally use if you're going to put creamer in coffee?
Oh, I'm ambidextrous on that creamers.
Not picky, whatever
I'm
kind.
not picky, but we usually use the kind that doesn't have sugar in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta watch the sugar count.
Gotta watch that sugar count.
I'm with you. Well, Mike, I feel like you got some stories that you could just randomly tell us. Do you have any good stories that just come to mind here, or something you want to tell us about?
Deer hunting's pretty important in our family.
Okay.
Everybody's got deer stories, Sarah. But,
well, Mike, I'm interested. Whatever you're going to say, I'm all in because I'm not a deer hunter. So put it in layman's terms for a non-deer hunter.
All right. Well, my dad was a lifelong deer hunter.
Okay.
And he was always really good about going out and getting these deer. He just could get it every year. And he always went by himself. He's so independent. He almost never needed any help. But I remember the last time he went hunting, he was 91. And something told me, you probably ought to hunt with Dad this year. So instead of hunting over where I live, I came over here to hunt with Dad that morning. And he was on a stand about, not quite 400 yards south of where we're sitting.
Okay.
And he didn't go to a lot of trouble. He drove his little John Deere Gator down in the woods and got out and sat on a folding chair, and that was Dad's stand. Well,
I love it.
I was about 300 yards west of him through a lot of woods, and I was actually probably standing on the site of the new lake we're going to be building soon. And I'd seen some deer move through, but hadn't seen anything I wanted to shoot particularly. And all of a sudden I heard a shot. And I thought, I bet that was Dad. And that was right down from where he was at. So I waited about 5 minutes and I started walking quietly down through there to where Dad was. Well, when I got to where his gator was, he had gotten up and he'd gone about 60 or 70 yards further south, and he was standing in just a little gate in the fence there, and he was looking, he'd turn his head, and he'd look, and he'd always scope up, and he'd look through it, and I walked up there, and I said, "Did you get one, Dad?" And he says, "I must have missed him." I said, "What? You've never missed a deer." And he said, "Well, I don't know. He was standing right here where I am, and I shot him, and he ran off down that trail, and he went around the corner, and I don't know." I said, "Well, I bet he's laying down there." So we just started walking down. Dad had these paths mowed through the woods, and so we went down through this path, and I mean, we hadn't gone 40 yards, and there laid that deer just around the corner where you couldn't see it. And I'll never forget what he said. We were looking at this deer, and the rack's right out here on the porch. The kids use it to hang their wet towels. Okay. And it was a 9-point buck. It was a nice deer. And we looked at it a little bit, and Dad looked at me, and he said, "You think next year that deer would have had 10 points?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I've heard that they get a little bigger each year. That's possible." He said, I'm 91 years old. I'm not going to wait for any 9-point buck to grow up. I said, well, I don't blame you, Dad. I think you did the right thing.
That's great.
So I love that story.
Yeah.
And then, this is just amazing. My boys, Troy, Stephen, are just really into deer hunting and trail cameras, and they have multiple farms they like to do that on. Well, all of a sudden, a few years ago, about 4 years ago now maybe, they began to see this nice buck on this farm, Woody's farm. So they named the buck Woody. And I mean, he had a picket fence on each side,
wow.
just they matched perfectly, the points, and he was a wonderful animal. And a couple of years went by, and we probably had more pictures of Woody than some family members. So when we made our calendar at the end of that year, my daughter always puts together the calendar. Woody by golly was on the calendar for whatever 2018 or whatever year it was. He killed him, and so that year, Stephen finally killed Woody with his bow on November the 5th. And miraculously, that was only one day off from the day they put his picture on the calendar.
Oh my goodness.
And then what's more amazing than that is Troy had shot the same deer a year earlier with his gun and called Christy to tell her he'd shot Woody. And then about 3 minutes later, Woody gets up and runs off. And so
he survived
that. And
wow.
So anyway, Woody, they're just Woody stories. And of course, Woody's now in Stephen's home on the wall, and he's very elegant looking animal.
Wow.
And
he's still part of the family.
He's just still part of the family.
I love. So you said that your daughter makes a calendar every year for your family?
God bless her. She doesn't just do it for our family. She does it for my wife's family, and she does it for her in-laws. She makes about 4 of these, and she'll just accumulate all these electronic pictures everybody has lots of.
Yeah.
And she goes through them and the pages are just full of pictures on each of these calendars, and it's wonderful.
What a neat thing, I'm sure, every year to flip over the month and just...
And she's going to start, she usually puts it out about the end of September, so she's getting ready to start on this year.
Okay. Wow. That's neat. So Mike, how are you? Are you on social media? Are you on Facebook, Instagram?
I am a Facebooker for quite some time, as is Woody, my 102-year-old father.
He's on Facebook?
He's a Facebooker, oh yeah. And
I feel like we're all going to have to go find Woody on Facebook.
You're going to have to go look up Woodrow Boulware on Facebook.
Wow.
But, yeah, he loves to watch Facebook. And
Does he really?
He'll call out, he'll say, no news going on around here. It's time y'all started putting on some stuff. And so people
will post stuff for him.
People start posting things and comments to him, and he loves all that.
I think we're going to have to go comment and leave.
Comment to Woody.
Yeah.
He loves it. And,
you said he's how old?
102. He's born in 18.
Wow.
And so he's an amazing story.
I bet.
Where was that going?
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Social media, Facebook.
And just like last weekend, 2 weekends ago, I handed my phone to Christy, and I said, I think I ought to be on Instagram. So she got me on Instagram. So I've been on Instagram now for a couple weeks.
That's great. Do you care if people, if our listeners come friend you on Facebook?
Oh, no.
We'll have them.
I just friend about everybody I can think of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I hear that you're pretty well known around here, that most people know you, or I hear you.
That's probably true, but I know a lot of people. Let's twist it around.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good.
My contact list in my phone. There's lots.
There's a lot of
phone numbers in there.
I love it. Well, we'll make sure everybody finds you on social media.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, kind of just to wrap up our time, or do you have anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we kind of?
I kind of want some of Will's coffee.
I know. I feel like we need the coffee. The coffee. We'll have to get you out here for
Okay.
Maybe we need a Woody's blend. We need to ask our friend
Woody's
Glenn.
blend.
Yes, it's our friend Glenn.
Oh.
He owns a coffee company. Our listeners have heard about it. Java Hipster is what it's called. Maybe we need to see about getting a specialty.
If he comes up with a Woody's Cabin blend,
I feel like
we'll help him sell it.
I was just saying, I feel like we could get a lot of takers on that.
Yeah.
We're going to work on that. We're going to see what we can do.
That's good.
Well, Mike, that does sound good, but the podcast is called Now That's Something Good. So, do you have anything good that you just want to share, or something? I mean, it can be anything. There's no...
Well, I probably shouldn't compliment you so much, but Sarah, what you and Will are doing here is very, very good. And you are so gifted at your questioning. You really bring it out of us, and you bring our emotions out, and I'm sure that makes more enjoyable listening. And this Will guy you got here, he was a pretty good land for you. I mean, he's all right.
He really is. He was definitely good.
Yeah, so I
married up.
I think you two are pretty good.
Well, thank you, Mike, so much. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Yep.
It's going to be a lot of fun and a blessing to a lot of people I know.
Hope so.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.
We are so grateful Grandpa Mike would share his story with us today. We love hearing your feedback from each episode. Your text, emails, DMs, and Facebook messages about how you are connecting with the stories shared is so encouraging. Keep them coming. You can reach out to us anytime at podcast@sarahgood.com or on our social pages. Next week, we have a special guest. I'll give you a few clues. It's a girl. She shares the Good last name and is celebrating a big milestone. We can't wait for you to join us back here next week. Now, go share something good with a friend.